This episode was originally a live conversation at Startup Night 2022 in Winterthur.
Hey, but Toby, I'm going to Hawaii. I didn't find anything in Honolulu. Okay, we went back internet, search for guides in Honolulu and tried to acquire them.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Sylvan.
Tobias, a very well welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's such a pleasure to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
You're the co-founder and CTO at GetYourGuide, the leading booking platform unlocking unforgettable travel experiences, which you also have, of course, used many times with the Swisspreneur team. Before we talk about your impressive story, I actually want to start with your personal background. You studied information technology and also electrical engineering at the ETH in Zurich. And during your studies, you also worked for the design agency Palindrome, I think that's how you pronounce it. And back then, I just wonder, what were your big dreams, your ambitions, that you followed?
Wow, you did really well research. Yes, Palindrome was one of my student jobs. I'm not sure where that's listed, but it was not a big thing. So my big dreams were actually like more going into the education. So all my siblings, so sister, brothers, my parents, all are teachers. So I was dedicated to do that as well. I do have an education to teach. But I would say, luckily, I did another path and found it with a few friends from the university, like GetYourGuide.
That's quite a different career path then, having the family background fully in education. Where does your entrepreneurial drive come from? Did you have any role models or anyone else outside of the family that inspired you?
Totally not. And we really have also seen that difference between the founders. I was kind of the greenhorn, like no idea from entrepreneurship. I was the tech guy. So yes, I know how to program computers, but like the entrepreneurial stuff definitely came from like my co-founders. And over time, of course, and you probably hear it in my speech today or in the interview, it comes learning by doing, right? I mean, right. You start understanding how things work, what's important. And it's definitely a different story than being a teacher, I can tell you.
Absolutely. But basically, you put the learning into a different practice, so to speak, right?
Yeah, sure.
So in 2009, you co-founded GetYourGuide. You were 5 co-founders in total. Where did you actually meet your 4 other co-founders?
Exactly. I was saying friends from ETH, but it was actually, I only knew one. So Pascal, I was studying with him. And he kind of met the other co-founders in a course at ETH. So he also was not like friends with them. It was really, he just liked their pitch. So they pitched GetYourGuide for writing a business plan, and he just liked that and joined that team. And after they finished their course, they had the business plan, so a piece of paper. That was not enough for them. And then they were looking for someone that has the skill to build that. Mm-hmm. And Pascal just called me up and said, "Hey, Toby, do you want to build a website?" And I immediately said yes, because that's what I like doing. Yeah. And only later on, I learned about what the website is about and what we are building.
What kind of students, what type of students were your co-founders? Do you remember back then?
To be honest, I didn't really follow like them during the studies. But when we met in our small office in Technopark, it was definitely a lot of energy, a lot of vision, a lot of passion. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I guess they were similar during their studies. What I do know, though, they studied completely different things, right? So biochemistry, economics, physics. So none of us had a travel background.
And that's actually fascinating, because then you could also argue it doesn't matter too much what you actually study. If you have enough motivation and drive, you can actually tackle anything you want.
I do agree, yes. I mean, the vision and the passion is half of it. Yeah. And I mean, we could not get into kind of, I don't know, crypto, because that's very tech. But travel, I would say, is very low tech. Yeah. So everybody travels. It's somehow easy to understand how that market works.
Yeah. And we also read that the initial idea of GetYourGuide came from a personal experience from Johannes and Tal, 2 of the 5 co-founders. they had a travel experience and were not that happy about it. They saw a solution to improve things. Can you elaborate a bit more about these early beginnings?
Yeah, exactly. It was a trip to Beijing when Tao and Johannes and another bunch of students went. And for whatever reason, Johannes arrived one day earlier. And he was looking forward to kind of spend a day in that city, exploring the city, but he had so much troubles to understand the people, to communicate, kind of to navigate. So he basically stayed in the hotel for that day till Tao arrived. If you've seen Tao, he has some Chinese background, he speaks Mandarin, and like that was a game changer for him and the group, right? They really unlocked then all these experiences. And during that time, Johannes thought how amazing it would be to book a student that is already in the destination, that knows the city, that knows English, and then just pick him up from the airport, bring him to the hotel and show him some sights. And this was really the initial idea. It was from a personal pain point where the idea kind of started.
But I think that's actually a very strong motivator to change things, right? If you want to use the potential solution yourself, you have a strong motivation to change things.
Definitely. I mean, that was, we saw the pain, we saw a solution. But if we go a little bit forward, and probably we'll ask later about that, we changed a little bit our business model.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, the initial idea was very tailored to students. But we failed. With that first prototype that we launched, we completely failed. Students didn't register as guide. They didn't see their value they could add to international people visiting their hometown, basically. So we really failed. But we realized there is a big need for professional businesses. Professional guides, they already existed in those cities to get more sales and to get sales online, right? That was completely new for them.
How did you exactly realize this?
It was really, we launched the first prototype for students, and then they started approaching us and say, hey, can we be on your platform? How much does it cost? And so on and so forth. And it was not only one, it was a handful. And then we realized that's probably the better business.
Right.
And then we reached out to a few more here around Zurich and asked them, hey, what is actually the need? Yeah. And this is where we went back to the drawing board and redesigned a little bit our product. It was still similar, but definitely more tailored to these professional suppliers. And with the launch of GetYourGuide 2.0, that's how we called it back then. Everything was 2.0. Right. We kind of launched this marketplace that we still have today.
And I think what you just described, this is a very normal thing to happen for almost any startup. You rarely end up with the initial idea that you had back in the days, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think you also need to be bold enough to make that decision, that you go away from your idea and your first vision to really where the market is probably. So definitely follow a little bit the market. And yes, I think for us, the pivot was not as dramatic. Even though our early investors like ZKB, they didn't like that. They wanted to invest in the student platform.
Yeah, of course, that's the interesting clientele for them, right?
But probably looking back, I would say they are happy with that.
I can imagine. Talking about the market, how did the travel market look like, back in your early days? I imagine it not to be so digital. There was some stuff going on, but the internet probably changed a lot of things in the market.
Exactly. So when we arrived, I mean, internet was there for quite a while. Sure. And what we've seen, like flights and hotels were already like a few steps ahead of tours and activities in the space where we are. And so I think that's also why all these suppliers, how we call the guides, supplier reached out to us. They saw like all the other segments from travel moved slowly online, and they were really lagging behind. Right. And that's why they were looking for a solution. And we fortunately could provide that.
Something that we often underestimate by talking to many podcast guests, they say timing is crucial, but you often don't really grasp it until you can look back to it and say, oh, we actually had really good timing. How would you describe the importance of timing in GetYourGuide story?
No, it's absolutely right. I mean, I give some presentation and usually I talk about the 5 factors to success. And the first one is exactly timing. And yes, you only realize that later, right? Yeah. While you're in your kind of dreaming phase, this is the product that we will launch.
Yeah.
You're probably not looking at that, but looking back, it's exactly what I told you. Hotels, flights were digitalized, were online. It was just a natural next step that also like tours and activity goes online. But so, yeah, I'm not sure if you could make a constant step out of your daily business when you're very early stage and look at, is it the right timing? But yeah, at the end, it's probably a bit of luck as well.
You probably felt it, right? Because you got this inbound interest, and that sort of shows you, hey, the timing might be quite good because there's an initial interest to solve this problem.
Exactly. And I think that's also like probably the strength, or that we said, yes, we were open to that change, right? As I was saying before. So look at the market, what is the need? And it's always the fun story, but I want to mention it again.
Sure.
I think there is only very few companies out there that can launch products even before market fit, and it's Apple, right? I mean, they launched the iPhone, everybody was laughing. I mean, you don't have a keyboard, a physical one, but they changed really how people behave. It's a bold goal if you as a company really, or as a startup really want to have that, and I would rather go on the safe path and try to adapt to the market rather than hope to really change the market.
Right.
But
because most try, they don't actually change the market, they just fail.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's also talk about your platform. You empower both, not only the tourists, but also the suppliers, the service providers, basically. So how do you actually bring them together? What is GetYourGuide's platform today?
Not 100% sure I understand the question. So the two-sided marketplace is, yes, it's the suppliers, and they, like the tours are their product. So it's always a supplier behind the tour, and that's the one side of the marketplace. And the other side is really the travelers, right? The people going on vacation. And yeah, for us, it's exactly, that's the challenge. How can we fit them together? Because that's also a funny story. So many people want to have or do these things of the hidden path, like nobody else is doing. That's always what they're talking about. But what we see, what they book, is then the Eiffel Tower ticket, the Louvre Museum, the sand cruise, right? So I think the say-do ratio, because it's very. But for us, it's definitely, even though the people buy the Eiffel Tower ticket, we have much more, and that's one of our challenge to say, hey, okay, you do the Eiffel Tower ticket, but why don't you want to do like a French food tour given the district in Paris?
Right.
And this is really the challenging point, like that they can discover the full inventory that we have, and not just the things that are anyways top of their head when they're traveling to Paris.
Right. If they book the more traditional, tours, let's put it that way, how big of an importance is the upselling game that you then also can sell them a second tour or a second experience?
I mean, it should be big. We are working on that. Currently, we still see people book one thing and then they go back to Google, come through Google again to us, book another thing. So keeping the people in our ecosystem is definitely something we are working on.
Because then you basically pay double acquisition cost, right? That's not that fun from a business perspective.
Exactly. So Google is our friend, but I think we pay enough for acquiring people. And that's, I mean, if you talk about Google, it's always kind of this frenemy relationship. Of course, I mean, they're doing an amazing job. We can very easily acquire customers, but also they try always launch new products to kind of make people come back to their platform, and they don't really leverage like the companies themselves to promote their brand, right? I understand their interest. They should also understand us. So it's a little bit of give and take.
I mean, at the same time, Google could also be a potential competitor, right? I'm sure that any investor will tell you that all the time, but when you see what they do to Google Flights, for example, or to like massages or hotels, where they also have a booking integrated in the search, that is probably a potential real threat for you.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, they will never do the transaction themselves, right? Even though you book in a Google Mask, right? It will still go on our platform, because I've not seen Google doing all the customer support, all like the acquisition of the suppliers. But that will mean our brand disappears more or less, and we will be just the booking engine. We are definitely fighting hard against that, and exactly this is also where the brand really makes a difference, right? If people come back to us and really say you can trust GetYourGuide, I mean, either everything works or they refunded us. That's definitely what we want to build, this trust, because in the Google mask or if you book on a Google website, they still, and that's their plan, they will still have multiple providers, right? And it would be GetYourGuide, it would be others, and so I'm not sure if you then always know, okay, if I book with Google, I get this kind of service level. Yeah, let's see where they're going. I know Google launches every now and then new products. You've seen with shopping, there was very similar with the for tours and activities. So in their search, they had a banner to immediately book. They also tried something in maps. So you could book tickets for museums directly in the maps. It was using our APIs, but it was in Google. And most of their product, they shut down again.
Yeah.
So they're also struggling, and I think it's also hard for them to kind of position themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, we need to,
It's a bit of a love-hate relationship.
Exactly, and you just need to provide an amazing customer experience, and people should know your brand.
Absolutely.
And then I think we can survive and even win.
Exactly. What is actually your business model behind the platform? Do you have a core revenue stream or even multiple revenue streams that you focus on?
No, the only revenue stream we have is commission-based. Yeah. So, and this also helped us initially to get a lot of supplier onboarded, right? I mean, we don't have listing fees. We don't have like annual subscription or monthly subscription. It's all for free. You can upload your product. We will market it. Yeah. If you get a booking, we take a commission.
Yeah. Talking about aligning the incentives, right? This is probably crucial that you get a huge supply of different tour operators.
Exactly. And we can a little bit talk about the marketplace approach. I mean, back in the days, we were the only one that were doing this as a marketplace. So basically every supplier, tiny ones, big ones, could be on our platform. Mm-hmm. Our biggest competitor, I can mention it, is Viator. They are part of TripAdvisor. They used to be standalone, and I mean, before they were bought or acquired by TripAdvisor. Mm-hmm. And their model was to go to a city and do exclusive deals with one or two providers, tour operators, right? Yeah. And we were a marketplace, and pretty quickly we kind of outgrew the inventory. I mean, number of activities we could onboard. I need to be honest, like having all the long tail is not always beneficial, right? Initially, and I can tell you most of the revenue we made is with these fat tail, right? It's the tickets, the museum ticket, Eiffel Tower ticket. This is also the, I would say, easy products, right? Mm-hmm. If somebody gets an Eiffel Tower ticket, they know what they have. Yeah. About the walking tour, okay, is the guide speaking my language? Where is the meeting point? It's way, way more complex. And also there is so many different walking tours, right? And this is then only like the second tier, and we had even a longer tail, right? And sometimes this long tail is also disrupting you a little bit from focusing on where really the revenue is coming from. And finally, when Viator got acquired by TripAdvisor, they immediately also switched kind of to this marketplace approach, because that's like TripAdvisor. They have reviews for everything.
Of course.
And I think that also kind of slowed them a little bit down, right? Mm-hmm. Suddenly they had much more inventory than we had. I'm not even sure if everything was bookable. Mm-hmm. I think that was not only positive for their end. So
I want to talk a bit more about this marketplace platform approach, because this is super interesting. So the first thing is, of course, often I could imagine, especially when starting out, you probably have sort of an adverse selection that only the tour operators, that don't get enough clients would really want to go on your platform and be listed, because they say we desperately need the revenue. Mm-hmm. So even if it's listed for free, they say, oh yeah, please bring me on because I can use more business. But the top tier ones, they might be fully booked. They just say we can't be bothered to be listed on the platform because we already have enough business. How do you solve this to have enough of the top tier attractions on there?
It's a very good question. And initially you couldn't get them. I mean, I make the example again because it's just big. Eiffel Tower is owned by the state, right? Yeah. And they have only very selected resellers that could sell their tickets. And then initially we went to the resellers to ask, hey, can we sell your tickets? And I think that was somehow still legal-ish.
Gray area.
Let's say gray area. This is like initially how we get that, and it took years to negotiate with them that we can have now a direct connection.
Wow.
And what really helped was like having local people, right? I mean, initially we started in Zurich, so we like how we acquired suppliers was call it emailing.
Sure, yeah.
Eventually we also had like local offices. We started in Rome, then Paris, and this really unlocked a lot of things. If you go and have a coffee with them, if you say hello, invite for a dinner, be part of the network in the cities, right? There is many communities that really help to kind of exactly unlock these, let's say the fat tail.
But that's also a high maintenance effort, right? Because I assume very few companies would be willing to put in that effort to, meet them for a coffee or even for a dinner to actually get them on the platform. Many would just send an email and then leave it.
But there is also not many of these super big attractions, right? In Paris, probably Moulin Rouge, Louvre, Eiffel Tower. So yes, we invest that in those cities that we want to be. It's not yet all over the world, but many cities we do that investment and really go there. And I mean, now it's Broadway, New York. We really want that.
And this chicken and egg problem, right, of any platform in the early days, how did you solve that from a focus perspective? Did you focus more on the supply side at the beginning and then shift it to the demand side, or did you always have a good ratio in mind to balance them, or did one follow the other? How was that for you?
So initially, it was extremely focused on supply, right? I mean, if you have a store, the marketplace, and the shelves are empty, nobody comes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? So initially, we heavily focused on supply. And the problem with travel, it is international. So you can not only have like tours in Switzerland and then people will come. Even you say your audience is coming from, so they travel all over the world.
Of course.
Okay, they Rome, Paris, Marseille, Barcelona, everywhere. So we needed to have at least a little bit everywhere to kind of be at least a little bit relevant. And again, the fun story is we were very opportunistic how we acquired that. And some of it was driven by friends, right? We talked to our friends and said, hey, check out our platform. You can find everything. And okay, next day they come back and say, hey, but Toby, I'm going to Hawaii. I didn't find anything in Honolulu. Okay, we went back internet, search for guides in Honolulu and tried to acquire that. Really opportunistic and not very strategic. But as there was very little sign-up cost or kind of sign-up effort, we had very quickly a lot of inventory. And only then we focused on more like the demand, right? And back in the days, 12 years back, it was not so clear that it's paid search, right?
Sure.
It was a lot of SEO optimization. We did a lot of partnerships, which still is very successful, right? We started with travel.ch, a partner that, the good thing, they have very targeted audience, right? They know where they go and when. So we could already in the email send some activities that matches. Exactly. But you're saying that, right? So it's always a little bit up and down how we focus on demand and supply.
Right.
I think demand is always full speed, but sometimes we go a little bit deeper in supply, right? Have more quality and long tail in fewer destinations. Then we go broad and want to have like everywhere something to get a little bit coverage, right? I mean, people are not only going to the big cities, sometimes a little bit other destination that we should also cover, right? So that's a little bit a wave, kind of.
The story that you shared before of, getting suppliers onboarded for places that your friends visited, that reminds me a bit of the article by Paul Graham from Y Combinator, Do Things That Don't Scale. That's basically the starting point, right? You had to make that happen, and then they got an instant booking, and they were probably really happy that they saw some traction coming in there.
Yeah, exactly. At the end, or at the beginning, I was not so sure how much we already thought about super big scale.
Sure.
And exactly, we needed to do what we saw instant benefit. At least our friends were happy if they booked. It's a different question. But at least the search result page was not empty.
With the bookings, how did that work? Because I could imagine that, then informing a potential operator about the booking via email or text message or anything of that sort, they might also have different systems that they used. Was that a challenge that you had to overcome in the early days?
It was definitely a challenge. So the channel we've chosen was email, and like they could log in our portal and saw the booking. And we did have a few bookings that slipped kind of through, and they didn't realize. But I don't think it was a massive problem for us. These days, the landscape has changed a little bit. There is a lot of systems these suppliers already use, right, for doing, I don't know, all their accounting stuff and so on and so forth. And we definitely need to connect to them. I mean, and we are connecting to those. So, and then also the booking is sent to those. They will immediately see it. So I think the problem with all these systems definitely disappeared.
Nice.
I mean, we still have issues that they don't get picked up and all this happens, but I think there is no systematic problem.
Yeah, perfect. And you also mentioned the importance of having, activities all over the world, basically. How did you choose the cities, besides your friends visiting them? How did you choose the cities where you wanted to have, activities listed? Did you do like a ranking of the most attractive cities, or how did you go about that?
Yeah, exactly. I think we used various sources for that. I mean, there's travel reports where Germans go. They don't not only go to Mallorca. And where like our, let's say, we call it the source market. It's where the people are coming from. You can have reports on that, where they go, right? And then it's also like a very clear decision. For example, we don't do beach, right? Because on the beach, you're more spontaneous. You probably walk to the beach house that sells you or like rents you the surfboard. It's not yet so digitalized. I mean, I'm saying not yet, right?
Yeah.
So we really focus on the big cities, and for that you have pretty good data on where people go. And then it was also, one question was always like, can we really unlock the supply, right? Can we get enough and good supply in this city?
Right. And how did you then go about that? Did you focus on really like paid advertising, SEO, and different channels to acquire the users?
So on the supply side, we don't do a lot of kind of supplier marketing, or we didn't do. We are starting about yet because we also want to have people coming in, right? And even more, right? So the fat tail, it's always kind of out by we need to call them up and go and have a coffee.
So it's a bit like B2B sales, right?
Yes, exactly. And we need to tell them the advantages of being on our platform. The good thing though is, I mean, 10 years back, nobody knew what we are doing. So I think we have kind of a name. And once you get into a city, it's also mouth to mouth, right? So suppliers talk and say, hey, I'm there. They want to be there where the competitors are. So
And, then when you grow the market, I can imagine that you generate more revenue for a specific partner. And then I just wonder, at a certain point, you probably also have really interesting negotiations or discussions on both sides, right? Either they come to you and say, hey, we are so important to you because you bring in that amount of revenue. We want to have, a lower fee or whatsoever. Or on the other hand, you could also do the same and say, we bring you so much business, we actually want to now have a higher fee. I'm sure you're laughing. These conversations happen,
What do you think, in which direction it goes?
Yeah, of course. They always want to make more money. So they come and say, you should lower your fees.
It's different. And I was also thinking the same way. I thought, okay, the more volume we get, we can lower the commission, but it's actually the opposite. So if we bring them more customers, we can increase the conversion rate. And the point is that the more customers they have with us and the frictionless, like all the booking process works, and the more they trust us, they are willing to give more.
Wow.
I don't think we make at least for the big ones, we make the majority of bookings, right? Because for them, it's also risk. So if we suddenly rank their products lower on our page, they are fucked if it's just our channel they're using, right?
Yeah.
And that's why probably they are happy to give more commission and still continue the good collaboration. So,
how do you balance that? Because it's a very not so easy to strike balance, because you don't want to charge too much that they will leave the platform, but you also don't want to charge too little to leave too much money on the table.
Yeah, it's actually, I mean, I think it's sales skills, and I don't have that, so it's the people going to have the coffee. But I do know during the pandemic, we had a hard time, they had a hard time. We kind of stopped all the negotiations, so we kind of said, hey, let's first get back on track, and then let's see. Yeah, because the bigger we are, and I do get some very bad comments that like, big GetYourGuide takes so much commission, they screw you. That's the game you play, becoming bigger. I still hope we are a fair partner, and that our commissions are fair to like the service we provide for them.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you always have these statements in any marketplace business. That's just the way it is.
Exactly.
I assume.
You always have people that don't like what you're doing, and
that's part of the game.
But I needed to learn to take that.
Sure, yeah. On the personal level, it's not
exactly
the easiest thing to do. Yeah. You mentioned COVID. So in 2019, you were actually raising your Series E round, but then in 2020, obviously, COVID happened. What was your initial reaction when you saw, there's a virus spreading around the world? Nobody knew what was coming, back then. What was your initial reaction?
So I remember the first time I heard about COVID was we were on vacation in Arosa, skiing with my parents-in-law, and my mother-in-law said, hey, this virus is coming. And I was a little bit laughing and said,
sure, yeah.
What is that? And then at the end of the week, she said, no, there is even a case in Switzerland. I said, okay, fair enough.
One case.
And then coming back after vacation, I think a couple of weeks later, really like Italy was hit heavily. And I only realized, wow, this was big. Initial reaction in the company, we had we came up with 3 principles. So save money.
Of course.
Really just save money wherever you can. Stay together as a team. I can elaborate that a little bit later. And still customer first. And customer first was mainly in the first weeks. I knew many people were stuck all around the world. We didn't want them to have extra pain for getting refunds for whatever. So we basically canceled most of the tours that we knew could not happen anymore and refunded money. So that was additional week. And then stay with the team. As a company, we put a lot of effort in culture. A lot of effort. And just letting go these people that you kind of paid a lot for making them really fit into the company would be a waste, right? So that was really like, we believed in our team. At the end, we could not make it completely, like the pandemic took too long and customer service was like just sitting at home. I mean, all on Kurzarbeit. We did let go a few, but the core was still the same. And the last one, I mean, saving money and cutting costs, that was actually a very good exercise that we did. It was really overall kind of helpful to go over the books and say, hey, do we need that spend? Do we need that? I wouldn't say we kind of wasted money before, but we were definitely not looking as closely on all, and all the lines in the book as we did during the pandemic. And I think it was very helpful that it still continues, right? This kind of mindset.
Absolutely.
Do we really need it?
You got a bit more disciplined in that regard.
Exactly.
What were some of the surprising items that you got rid of from a cost perspective?
So there is one item that always surprised me. I mean, I think it was over 200 licensing fees for software tools. I don't even know 200 software tools. And I mean, I know how it came, right? You hire someone from another company and they say, hey, we use this tool. Okay, let's buy it. And another one, hey, we use this. And suddenly you have like a lot. That was really surprising. And I'm not sure where we are right now, but we could definitely cancel a lot of them without big impact.
That's actually a good thing to take away for every founder out there, right? Analyze your spend and think where you can actually cut costs.
Yeah, exactly. Once in a while, look a little bit closer. Do we really need that? Yeah.
But
it takes time.
Of course,
it doesn't come for free. So that's why most of the founders don't do it and rather focus on the business and like their main KPIs, right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
One other strategy could be to change your revenue streams. Was that also something that you were thinking about or elaborating in more detail?
The one thing we discussed is going more domestic. So currently we are mainly for traveling going abroad. As like borders were closed during pandemic, especially in the US, People were still traveling, but within US.
Right.
So can we have or change or adapt our supply to kind of tailor their needs? We made a conscious decision to say no, because I think it would have been quite a shift for our sales structure and all the stuff. And we all believe travel is coming back. I mean, we knew it's coming back. We just didn't know when.
Yeah, we see it now. Luckily, it is back.
I mean, the summer was amazing. I mean, numbers were skyrocketing.
Wow.
That's really good.
People really needed that travel back.
Yeah, exactly. We hope it's lasting and it was not only a one-off like that. Like everybody kind of exactly need to get it back, but we also hope they're going to continue travel next year and the year after.
And one thing is, you mentioned before, right? You didn't know when travel was coming back. So on a personal, on a psychological level, I imagine this must have been really difficult because you basically had to put your whole business on hold and you didn't know when you were actually able to pick it back up again. How do you deal with that?
So for me personally, I didn't really felt very bad because I knew it's an external factor and I cannot do anything.
No.
I cannot do anything. Johannes, the CEO and co-founder, he's that I'm stopped looking at the reports. They make me so depressed.
I imagine, yeah.
And but it was the big uncertainty for the teams, right? I mean, it's their jobs. They didn't know if it's coming back and when do we need to lay off even more people. And this was the big uncertainty. And also, I mean, for the investors, I think Johannes did a very good job to kind of, I mean, we started doing, I think, bi-weekly investor calls and really a lot of information, very transparent, like really all the detailed number. Even internally, we shared much more numbers than before because that they see, and you mentioned it, there was around 2019, which was big plus for us. So we had a lot of money on the bank so that they saw it's not at risk. We can still operate. We can still pay the salaries. But at the end it was, I mean, the 2 years overall was very long. The good thing is the summer 2021, the second year, we already saw a little bit of business. This was really already the hope. And unfortunately, like we slipped into another wave again.
But that was a certain light at the end of the tunnel.
At least we saw, people are coming back.
Right.
And
Yeah, but this transparency to really communicate openly and also underlie that with numbers that you openly share across the company and with investors, that's a crucial part to build and to keep the trust of everyone involved.
Yes, I think so. And we were always very open with numbers, but not in that detail, right? Yeah. Because sometimes, I mean, if you're not with all the background, sometimes this number looks scary. Even though it's all green, all on track. Yeah. So that's why we are before a little bit more hesitant to share everything. But
we're then now when in this summer 2022, you know, people were traveling again like crazy. Did you have to, you know, re-ramp up the team sizes or anything of that sort to get back up to speed, to not be overwhelmed when travel was actually coming back?
So the only thing we needed to ramp up is customer service. But this is anyways that we are doing a little bit all the time. It's very seasonal business, right? In summer you have a huge peak and then towards winter, like you can I mean, how we do it these days is like we have external service providers and they can easily ramp up. And the good thing is we are having the peak in summer where most of other businesses have the peak probably Christmas.
True. Yeah.
So I think for even the external provider, we are a very good complementary client. So it was basically just ramping up those, like all the tech team. And I mean, even during the pandemic, we heavily pushed on product innovation and like tech foundation. So we were pretty good to go.
Kept on shipping.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the one thing was tricky. We do a lot of A/B experimentation. If you don't have traffic, I mean, you cannot really prove what you are launching.
But that's an okay problem to have.
It was okay. I mean, some of the tests we even did again in 2022 to just reevaluate or revalidate.
Perfect. Yeah. I also want to talk about the growth of the company because you had a tremendous growth. And with that growth, of course, there also come some challenges with it, right? So my first question is to you, to your role as a founder, how has that shifted over time? You know, from the very early days of creating the website, the first GetYourGuide website, to today, to leading a full tech team and having really an international company?
Actually, to correct something, I'm not leading the tech team anymore. And this was a conscious decision, and I can tell the history. It's a very good question. So, yes, you start as kind of just hacking the website, and then suddenly you start employing people. So you immediately become a team lead, kind of. You have people responsibility. And that's where you grow. And the more people you have, the less you could do on the tech, right?
Yeah.
And this is somehow what I also realized, and I wanted to be on top of our tech, of the technology, what we are using, how we are building things. Long story short, we started then hiring a CTO, right? I mean, there was several steps in between, but my role is still, I'm overlooking like the tech kind of as a tech stack. Mm-hmm. Our CTO is more like, look at tech, the organization, right? Yeah. He says we need more resources on that area and this area. And I'm basically the one saying how we are doing things and which technology and all this kind of, which is really what I like doing.
Perfect.
Nevertheless, you also grow in leadership, even though you don't have direct people you lead. As a founder, you're always a leader, right?
Of course, yeah. Whether you want it or not, yeah.
Exactly.
Obviously.
And but you grow into role.
At the same time, this is also something that some founders might get lost along the way, right? Where you say, this new role that is needed from a company perspective, it's just not a good fit. With you, it's the opposite. It's a perfect fit. It's exactly what you'll enjoy doing, what you're doing today. But these multiple growth curves that you have to go through and always, basically also reinvent yourself to a certain degree. How do you manage that as a founder? Because that's, I can imagine, also quite exhausting.
Yeah, but you grow very slowly, right? I mean, if I look now, 700 employees versus 5 founders, you should say, oh, what a big step. But I mean, you start hiring 1, 2, 3. Of course, so you really grow slowly. But what I can recommend, and that's exactly what I did, right? Being a team lead and leading like the tech organization and not doing tech anymore. It was all about people management.
Sure.
Reflecting once in a while, I would definitely recommend that, like stepping back and say, hey, do I really like what I'm doing hands-on, right? Yeah. And this is exactly where I said, hey, all these strategic decisions, probably I want to do something more concrete, more pragmatic right now. Yeah. And then we kind of made the transition that I kind of moved as, it's called principal engineer, whatever, like still on the tech stack, really. Mm-hmm. And we were looking for somebody that could form the organization.
Nice.
And by the way, it's also like hiring external people above you is a huge learning for you as well. I mean, I could benefit from him so much. It's also amazing.
That's an amazing source of learning and also growing yourself as a person. There's also learning by doing involved, obviously. Is there any other source that you use, like working with coaches or mentors along the way to help you with these growth stages?
Yeah, I know, like growth and personal growth is a huge topic. A couple of years ago, everybody had a mentor.
Right, yeah.
Then also like you should do online course or whatever.
Basically never stops.
I don't even read books, right? So how I learn is, I mean, sometimes watching tutorials, watching YouTube, it's the better medium for me than books.
Sure, yeah.
But how I learn the best is talking to people. Yeah. And not only internal, but also external. If you call them mentor, I wouldn't say so. They're usually not following me, but it's like one-off touches or a couple of times you talk about a very specific area. And I'm more focusing on that area that they are currently pressing, not like in general growth, right? And I mean, if you read a book about anything and then you don't use it, I'm not sure how much it sticks, right?
Yeah, fully agree. It's also very individual. Some people like to read, some people like to listen. Whatever works for you, figure it out and use that system. Yeah. What is, from your experience now, going through that growth story with GetYourGuide, what is harder and more difficult, growing revenue or growing headcount?
It's tough. So both is very, very difficult. I mean, just growing headcount is easy. You could just hire, whatever people, but growing the right headcount. And personally, I struggled a lot when I started not knowing everyone anymore. Yeah. Right? So 80-ish kind of. This is really when it says, oh, is that working with us? Or is it just visiting? Or that very personally, I struggled. And I think there exactly this kind of CTO role, or like back then it was the CEO, Johannes' role, to kind of form the company in a good way that you can still be efficient, that's very challenging.
No.
I didn't do that exactly because I wanted to do more tech. But growing revenue is as challenging, right? Because if you could unlock that, yeah.
And usually they go hand in hand, right? So you have both challenges at the same time.
I mean, ideally, you only grow revenue, but not the headcount. But
that's
that's
the ideal
a tricky
world.
part. Yeah,
absolutely. One thing that you also did along the growth, you basically moved your headquarters, not legally, but operationally, so to speak, from Zurich to Berlin.
It's also legally.
Okay.
So we are still GetYourGuide AG in Switzerland.
Okay.
But if you book currently with GetYourGuide, you make a contract with GetYourGuide Deutschland GmbH.
Okay.
So it's also legally we moved there. Yeah, the story is that the thing that even made us open an office in Berlin was customer service. So we realized a lot of questions about our product because it's not an easy product as flights. You go from A to B, right? Or hotels, you kind of know king size, queen size. It's all already standardized. It's not for us. So a lot of people called us and we just couldn't handle that. And having people for customer care in Switzerland is way too expensive, right? And then we decided to go to Berlin and open an office. So we sent out to Berlin and he hired a bunch of people. He was very successful. I mean, 10 years back, Berlin was not that hyped as these days. So a lot of unemployment. I mean, big international talent. It was really easy to hire people. So we started with customer service agent, then sales, then marketing, and so on. And we saw that it was way easier there than in Zurich. And then eventually, I mean, Johannes moved then, Martin, the other founder, and then we had a little bit troubles, like 2 founders in Zurich, 3 founders more or less in Berlin. And we saw that was not so healthy. So we decided, okay, let's double down on Berlin. It's where we saw bigger opportunities. And the question comes, why are we still in Zurich?
Sure.
And I committed to help the transition, but I could not commit to stay for longer in Berlin. And I think my co-founders took that and say, okay, in this case, let's keep Zurich, but a pure engineering office. And these days we are roughly 80 people again, and it's a very strong team.
I mean, you also have great access to talent here in Zurich, right? So that's probably a big asset, despite, of course, having higher costs probably, but that's a strong access to talent right here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what we are doing, e-commerce, is definitely not very hyped in Zurich. So that's more international and many function marketing and all the stuff. I think the market in Berlin is even better. Even though if you acquire or if you attract international talents, Berlin is still like the more shiny city for most of the people we employ than Zurich. I agree on the tech, very strong talent pool in Zurich, but you also have very strong companies.
Right, yeah.
Not to name it again, but Google.
Of course.
It's amazing to have them here, but for us, that's the enemy in a competition with talents, right? And you see more and more big tech companies moving to Zurich, which makes it even harder for us to kind of get those talents.
What helps you to attract someone to join GetYourGuide and not Google?
We always say that in GetYourGuide, you can still achieve something and release something quickly. I think Google is just so big that most of the project, I don't know if they ever make it to life. Definitely as a smaller company. I think also the vision, I mean, travel is always good. Like people love it, but it's actually very tough to kind of sell people why they should join us than Google. I think it's definitely a different culture, right? I mean, Google is so big. It's almost a corporate. Yes, you have all these benefits. If that's what you want, then go to Google.
Sure. It's also a very personal choice, a personal preference, how you prefer to work.
Probably. I mean, Google is definitely on top of all the computer science students at some point, right? It's the big tech giant and they are doing amazing products, no question. But if you want to stay there for a longer time, I don't know. I think you can still have much, much more impact at GetYourGuide than at Google. Unless, I mean, you're doing this amazing feature that got promoted on the search page, right?
Fair point. Now, if you look into the future, you successfully navigated through the COVID waters, but there are, of course, more challenges coming up in the world. You know, the Ukraine war with Russia, basically. Other, maybe, again, COVID lockdowns that might happen, who knows? High inflation, just to name a few. Do you think that GetYourGuide, with everything that you just went through over the past years, is becoming more resilient to also navigate through these challenges?
Yeah, definitely. I think we are more resilient. And again, I think those external factors we cannot influence. So we just need to be ready and be reactive. I mean, have the possibility to react quickly to navigate through those. And so far, the war was not directly affecting us. Inflation, probably. Let's see how that continues. But I think we will take whatever comes.
And what are your plans for the future? What do you have, planned in terms of expansion or feature development that you want to build in the near future?
Yeah, I think our product is far from perfect, so there is still a lot to do. And now with having a lot of traffic again, we also see like these few features being used, right? So it's much more fun these days to develop features. People are asking, are you going into the hotel space or kind of restaurant space? I don't think in the near future that, because there's still so much to do in our verticals, and there's even within our verticals, there's from ticket, from guided tours, transport, shows, there's still so much to do. I think we should focus on those and really nail those. So there is a lot of things to do. Really excited. I mean, to even further improve the product.
Absolutely. And if you look at your fundraising, right, you raised a significant amount of funds. At a certain point, this also, of course, pushes your valuation and makes a potential acquisition less and less likely, because the potential purchase price is just getting higher and higher. Is an acquisition something that you're thinking about, or are you more thinking about doing an IPO one day with GetYourGuide?
Yeah, acquisition was definitely a topic a couple years ago. But currently we are really making the books clean that we could go IPO. Yeah. And definitely these days it's not the right time.
Sure. Yeah.
So we need also to see how this market kind of goes. But it always depends. Like if there is someone giving an offer and we have the feeling it's a very well fit, we don't say no. But currently it looks more like an IPO than an acquisition.
Absolutely. Yeah, at a certain point, you just get too big to potentially be acquired.
Exactly. Personally, I would love to be acquired by Booking.com, right? I mean, this was always a little bit our godfather, right? They did all the right things for hotels, and we followed in many cases what they did. We also had not always good relationship. We did partner with them, and then they stopped collaboration. They did with someone else. Okay. Currently, as you said, it's probably too big for them.
Yeah, right. Now, Toby, to wrap up the conversation, we also have some rapid fire questions for you, where we're going to give you a choice that you can, like, different options to choose from, or a simple question, and you have to answer in one sentence.
Good.
You
ready? Try that.
Let's go. What is your favorite destination in Europe?
In Europe, it's Prague.
Nice. How many hours of sleep did you get last night?
Not so much. My big kid came over.
Oh, okay. Fair point. What is the most important or most relevant destination for GetYourGuide?
Rome.
Rome, wow. Okay. Coffee or tea?
Coffee. Tea only if I'm sick.
Okay. Are you a museum goer, a trekker, a clubber, a wanderer? What do you do when you go on activities abroad?
Still some clubbing.
That's good.
If the kids are not around.
I mean, the Berlin office is probably a great space for that, right?
Definitely.
And that brings me to the last question for you today. Berlin or Zurich?
Yeah, Zurich.
That's where you are and where your heart is, I guess.
Exactly.
Nice. Toby, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a real pleasure talking to you. Lots of success and all the best for the future.
Thanks. I wish the same for you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.